Oh, the humanity. It is Sunday, the 27th of the 4th, 2025. The time is 18 minutes past 10. And you know, your boy, in his everlasting insomnia, likes to listen to a broadcast, no, a podcast or two. On this occasion, I was listening to the internationally syndicated Sky F1 show, and their story has been, I don't know, storied, let's say. It's no surprise, or it should be a surprise perhaps, that the Sky F1 bods, the guys and girls, Simon, Bernie, Karun, Chandhok, Ted Kravitz, Pinks, that they struggle to put together a podcast in this postmodern day era of new media. But it's Sky. It's Rupert Murdoch, or formerly Rupert Murdoch. Surely they can inject some money into this and nail themselves a podcast. Well, they've tinkered with formats, and it was bloody Tom what's his name last year, and now it's only Bernie and Simon and Karun Chandhok, and they film from home. But yet and still, for Pete's sake, as a professional podcaster in inverted commas, you got to look at these things with a discerning eye. No, this isn't to talk about the content yet. We'll touch on that soon to come. But bloody Nora, do better, Turtle, Max, Brett, Dean. This is techier than techie things. Look, what are my principal points of contentions? If they were listening to this, sort out Bernie's audio in the first instance. For Pete's sake, some of the clips we're about to listen to. I mean, can't you get Bernie Collins a good mic? Yeah, she's an absolute god tier mind, and of course they're going to glaze her. Yeah, she's brilliant, fantastic insights each and every single time. But get her a mic. Look, new media, audio is super important, is it not? The second that I came on here with a bloody mic that was echoey, you lot destroyed me. So how comes, because it's Sky, everybody all of a sudden has these increased tolerances and thresholds for mediocrity? I do not. I'm too addicted to YouTube and media. I mean, I watch and listen with a discerning eye each and every single time. See the guys in North America, Stephen A. mention, Sean and Shorf. These guys are leading the way, right? Pat McAfee, legends each and every single time, blazing a trail for the one that they called new media. So why over in the UK and over in the F1 space do we have to tolerate a subpar, mediocre podcast from none other than the internationally syndicated broadcast? Audio is nonsense. Why does it look so rubbish as far as the visuals? Like, I can recommend you guys an editor if you want that can make your thing look pretty and professional. Yeah, you want to do the authentic thing. I get it. This isn't good enough, surely. Like, flipping Nora. And sort out the adverts. No adverts every 2 seconds. Audi adverts. What are we doing here? But that's not to say that some of the content wasn't god tier, chat. And I'm going to share it with you because it gets techier. And the context for this is as follows. Sky have for the longest time been accused of leveraging and or weaponising some British bias. That means, therefore, it takes the form of, it takes a very many different forms. But when they're talking about and dealing with Christian Horner's Red Bull, sometimes you hear them talking about the hospitality. I mean, if we're doing objectivity, surely you can't be going to get lunch at the Red Bull hospitality. Just a thought. And so sometimes when they're talking about Christian Horner in particular, you can see that they deal with Christian's multitudinous travails with kid gloves. That they don't necessarily go hard or as hard in the paint as you might expect from unbiased, internationally syndicated media. This time, though, it's gotten techier than techie things. Let me show you. Little man looking to get involved as per usual. Go on, let's have a listen to this. Because in the first instance, they're talking about the penalty and the fact that 5-second penalty for Max Verstappen took 10,000 gazillion years, not necessarily to issue, but to explain. Roll the clip in the first instance.
Ask him to do that. B, it took 2 hours and 39 minutes for us to receive the email explaining why they've been penalized, which it's an extraordinarily long time, right? It's a lap one, turn one incident. Obviously, the penalty we knew was notified, we knew what it was, but it took a very long time to get an explanation.
It's interesting, isn't it? That the late great Charlie Whiting always did that. He said, he just say it would be worth your while giving the place back, whether it's the race director, whether it's the stewards directly, or whether it's even the team. I was quite surprised that Red Bull didn't just say, because he still would have. Therefore, I suppose it was a case of he'd be giving up the clean air if he dropped back in behind Oscar Piastri. So they deemed it worth the roll of the dice on this occasion. But it would be so much simpler, because we are getting bogged down, it seems, quite a lot in this conversation. Every year we're coming to these same conclusions.
So Karun Chandhok on the money. MVP of this podcast, by the way, has come up a lot in my estimation. Once upon a time, I thought he was devoid of personality, a bit of panache and charisma, and all that he had was encyclopedic knowledge. But in the year that is 2025, he's done one of these in my estimation. He's hard-hitting facts, and he's peeling back at the pertinent and salient narratives and plot lines in Formula One. How very dare the FIA take 2 hours to issue and explain for the 5-second penalty? What are we doing here? That smacks of indecision, and Karun rightfully calls them out on it. Interesting though that Simon, the chair of the F1 show on the internationally syndicated Sky Sports F1's YouTube channel, chooses to take it in that direction, talking about Christian Horner and accountability, and why didn't they make the decision to give up the place sooner? And they continue. Roll the second clip.
I listen to the, Christian Horner's "our wind tunnel is a relic of the Cold War" thing. I mean, he's just PR spin, isn't it? It's like, this is the latest bit of, this is how he's such a master politician. You think of when they did the cost cap last year, and he's, the master of deflection. He just pivoted to some other story. I don't see Racing Bulls complaining about correlation for the wind tunnel. It's the same wind tunnel that they had. They use the same wind tunnel. And I actually asked a couple of the people at Racing Bulls and said, look, just on the QT, do you struggle with correlation? Nope. So it comes back to a Red Bull Racing issue, right?
Think he's hoodwinking us?
Maybe the Red Bull Racing side is, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There's a correlation between what's happening in their designer factory and the wind tunnel, but that's a Red Bull Racing issue rather than a, this is our relic of the Cold War wind tunnel where we're designing tanks.
Which they said was fine when you're trying to create big changes, but when you're looking for the final 2/10, it's so sensitive to temperature changes outside. That was the excuse, wasn't it?
I know, but they were doing that 2 years ago when they were winning. Well, and last.
Oh, the humanity. Karun Chandhok, Simon Lazenby and Bernie Collins taking the mick out of their old mate Christian Horner, pulling at his abbot of unreasoned rationale. Yeah, Christian Horner has made excuses and talked about the wind tunnel, the law of diminishing returns, that it's an old one, it's Neanderthal settings. I don't know whether to buy into that. I'm honestly not sure. Dr. Helmut Marko doesn't necessarily. So again, you could concur. I agree and second the notion of one Karun Chandhok, former F1 driver. But again, it feels like it's a departure from convention as far as the way that the Sky F1 guys and girls normally handle the one that they call Christian Horner. Roll the next clip, because it gets worse, chat. It gets worse and worse.
Dominated.
Oh, well, who are we to believe in this post-truth era? Hey,
you have to give Christian credit. He is very good at trying to at least spin it, isn't he? Like when he arrived at the post-race thing with all of his printouts ready to go to argue the Max Verstappen thing. And he's, I'm sure it's not an accident. His Instagram posts a picture from high up above showing Max ahead of Oscar. The fact that he's come off the brakes and is heading straight for the runoff area at a higher speed, let's just ignore that bit.
And it was beyond the apex as well, wasn't it? It looked like it was miles beyond the apex.
But I thought that picture was really bad because, I'm no driver, but that car is never going to make the turn.
No.
The picture clearly shows that he's never going to make the turn. So unless he does some sort of weird right angle with the car, that's not going around the turn. It even looks like in that picture, Oscar might not make the turn. And
Oh, the humanity, for real this time. Are you implying, Sky Sports F1, that Christian Horner, Red Bull Racing Team Principal and CEO, is lying? Is that what you're saying? Post-truth era. And again, this is a departure from convention as far as the way that Sky F1 historically, if past this prologue, have dealt with Christian Horner's stakehold, have managed his expectations. So keen have they been to show up to the Red Bull hospitality area and the hospitality parties and the annually held party for journalists, Christian Horner being the only team principal that still holds one, as at 2025. Very, very interesting. Now, of course, you can pick apart the various layers of truth or untruth as far as Christian Horner's thesis. Of course you can. The picture was a nonsense, but you understand the reason and the why. The rationale behind it is that he's got a generational driver that he's desperate to keep. He has a name, and his name is Max Emilian Verstappen. Roll the next clip.
But it works, doesn't
might
it?
not make the
This is
turn.
the thing.
And he's
like,
the one that's closer to
he
making it.
manages to
But it works, isn't it?
this
spin
the
the
thing,
narrative
like-
and get enough people to believe it that it becomes facts. And I do give him credit for it. Again, I go back to, you just look at the last 24 months and the number of sort of PR stories that they've had to manage, and he's weathered the storm and he's come out of it, hasn't he?
You say things with enough confidence and enough times, eventually someone believes you.
If you say things enough times with enough confidence, then somebody will believe. Bloody Nora, may as well just come out and call Christian Horner a liar. Do you know what I mean? Say it how you really mean it. Of course, Christian Horner is a spin doctor. Alistair Darling's settings, Tony Blair. I get it. It is true. But again, I think the news piece here, the biggest story in this that I'm trying to present to you is a departure from the norm and convention as far as the extent to which Sky Sports F1 and the F1 show, the broadcast, the internationally syndicated broadcast, the extent to which they're not prepared to handhold and treat Christian Horner with kid gloves. It makes me laugh. And then you get Bernie Collins stepping up and going in full send on one Lando Norris 1.0.
Lando is not just getting it together when I think he needs to try and put it together. Maybe it just needs a bit more focus, a bit less external distraction. I was the back and forth with Lewis in the race, overtaken under DRS, is a really good example of just watching any historical race would have given you that racecraft bit of advice in advance of the race. We sit down with drivers, we look at starts from previous years, who goes where on turn one, if the inside or the outside's better. We go through all of that. Like, I sit here in my office and I watch the highlights from the year before I go to that race weekend in order to make sure I'm sort of on top of what happened, because I know I won't remember. So why isn't either he or someone in the office saying, these are the overtaken, when you're in P10, these are the overtaken opportunities at this track. This is what you need to look out for. This is where the DRS lines are. Why is that not a Sunday morning thing when you're in P10 at a track where you're going to have to overtake a load of cars?
Bravo, Bernie Collins. That's the best point I've had made all season long. Of course, Lando Norris needs to do one of these, roll his sleeves up and get his due diligence elbows out. We said the same thing this time last year, didn't we? At the Austrian Grand Prix. Only a couple of years previous, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen had the exact same bloody interaction at the exact same turn for a go. Lando Norris 1.0. If indeed you want to continuously improve, then you will watch these bloody races. The one that they call Nico Rosberg said, if I were Lando, I would go back and watch all of Maximilian Verstappen's overtaking moves over the past 36 to 48 months. I would ingrain them in my psyche and have them memorized as if they were the times tables. 12's 144. It needs to be instinctive so that when you get to turn 4 at Austria, you know exactly what Max Verstappen's going to do. Or when it's wet at Brazil, you understand where the grip is and how to manipulate for the car on the limits of adhesion, just like Max Verstappen did in 2016 and 2024. What are we doing here? Lando Norris. Bernie Collins makes the point. It was daft, no noddy schoolboy errors that Lando Norris was executing for the overtake on Lewis Hamilton in an ostensibly slower SF25 Scuderia Ferrari car with that red and them there yellow badge and black prancing horse in the way that he did. Is he new to F1? No, he's not. 7 years deep now. What do we do? Or 6 years. This is his 7th year. He shouldn't be driving as if he's brand new to the formula. Take this seriously. Therefore, Bernie Collins makes the point. If the commentators are having to go away, the Sky F1 bods, for which we pay £90 a month, by the way, who still can't do podcasts, execute for podcasts very well, but I digress. If they're having to go away, and as far as their notes and presentation, go away and do some due diligence and some homework, then surely the guys and girls over at McLaren, if not Lando Norris himself, it would be incumbent upon the onus, therefore, is on them to go and do the same. If, of course, they want to win races and therefore championships, but maybe there's too many assumptions in their chat. Maybe I am superimposing onto Lando my and our and your way of being, that we all want to win and do the best that we can possibly. Maybe Lando does not. What else is the explanation, chat? Why else wouldn't you go and do your research? You rock up to your exams, your GCSEs and your A-levels, or your university finals, college finals, your SATs, and you haven't revised a lick in the upper echelon motorsport formula. Billions are at stake. Yeah, of course, Lando. And they continue. The next topic is to talk about Sir Lewis, and Karun Chandhok, MVP of the Sky F1 show, has some very pertinent points. Roll the clip.
Yeah, the trend is the worry for me. In Australia, Lewis was 0.16 off Charles. Japan, it became 3/10. Bahrain, it became 0.59. Saudi, it's become over 6/10. The trend is going the wrong way. For a driver we're hoping getting more and more accustomed to life at Ferrari, that gap should have been closing down, but it's going the wrong way.
I concur, sir. He's absolutely on the money. Again, Karun Chandhok didn't miss a beat. I will link the podcast in the description so you can go and check it out for yourself. Don't take my word for granted. Do your own research. Of course, Karun Chandhok is right. He goes on to say in a minute that he desperately wants Sir Lewis Hamilton to win, but the evidence isn't looking good. Again, if you're talking a simulation and acclimatization phase, if Lewis Hamilton is no longer in his honeymoon period, now only in his probation, looking to expedite for that payback, 60 million worth of payback, you could argue that the trend is saying something orthogonal now, that the trend is getting worse. The gap between him and Charles is doing one of these, chat, race by race by race, as outlined there by Karun Chandhok. Forget what I have to say. Do you know what I mean? I'm a Lewis Hamilton hater, a naysayer, apparently so they say. But Karun Chandhok, man with the encyclopedic F1 knowledge, lays out the data as it is. It is getting worse, not better. And if the problem were one of acclimatization, then you would expect it to be getting better. The gap, the delta between modern day journalism and Sir Lewis Carl to be getting smaller and smaller over time. Karun Chandhok continues.
And the reality is, I go back to what I said in our pre-season show, Simon. I want this to work. I want Lewis Hamilton to become world champion Ferrari for the sake of the sport. And as a fan, I think it'd be an amazing story to see him win his 8th world championship with Ferrari. But you can't just do this on willpower. This is... I'm not sure about this thing about, there's a lot of noise about he's taking time to adapt, things like that. But as you highlighted, Carlos Sainz has gone the other way, and he's outqualified Lewis in the last two in the Williams, which is not what you'd expect, obviously. So, and ultimately, this is not any driver we're talking about. This is arguably the greatest driver of all time. And one of the key qualities of the great drivers is adaptability. The Alonsos, the Hamiltons, the Schumachers, they're able to and should be able to adapt to different regulations, different cars, different tires. I think of Alonso winning with Bridgestone, Michelin, Pirelli, you know, it's that feel that you get. You know, that's what makes the great drivers, including Lewis, and he's done it before with changes of regulations and changes of teams. So that's why I don't really buy the I'm taking time to get used to this thing. I think there's something more fundamental in that it's not gelling for him either with this. I do think there's something in the type of car that we've got with the ground effects. It's just we're not seeing him at that peak that we used to see, did we? Pre-2022. You know, think of 2021 and some of those amazing races. We haven't seen those peaks since we came to this regulation car. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's not gelled for him in his, you know, at a holistic level across these regs.
Oh, the humanity. What a chaos. Karun Chandhok per Jomo saying that 7, some say soon to be 8-time champion, isn't showing the adaptability requisite to win that unprecedented 8th. That the great ones in Alonso and Schumacher and Sir Lewis in his pomp, Max Verstappen now, bloody Ayrton Senna going back to Alain Prost, what was always front and centre of their F1 pedalling artillery was the ability to adapt for different circumstances, different tyre manufacturers, Michelin and bloody Bridgestone back in the day, 05, 06, per Fernando Plan Alonso, man from Oviedo, Astoria, different cars, different rule sets, different handling dynamics. Lewis Hamilton of 2007, some might say, would have been able to nail that. So adaptable was he. So low on his schedule and priorities was risk management. Now, however, some would say at the ripe old age of 40, risk management does one of these on your priority, even if subconscious. And that, some say, is what's playing into his lack, his inability to adapt for an SF25 Scuderia Ferrari car that's unstable at the rear, the exact thing that Lewis Hamilton likes to weaponise to gain lap time and durable competitive advantage, a stable rear. Karun Chandhok's nailed it. Let me tell you about this as well, because again, I've spotted something in the F1 community. Since on this channel, objectivity is all that we seek, is it not? Never ever sacrificing the aforementioned nor true value at the altar of cognitive dissonance, partisanship, or recency bias. Here's what I saw. Because again, the Sky F1 fan base were loving it, were they not? Oh, how refreshing with Bernie. It was lovely seeing Bernie. Bernie is a legend. Spot on, Bernie. You're so intelligent, so knowledgeable. Bernie always adds more to the show. Blah, 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 blah. That stuff makes me allergic. Yeah, Bernie's good, but is she that good, really? I mean, they can't even sort out her bloody mic. Stop it, Sky F1. Glazers, it's too much and it's too disingenuous at this stage, especially when you see that final comment. I thank you for what I believe to be the most well-balanced and valuable podcast in F1. You guys are respectful, honest and clearly knowledgeable people. Keep up the good work. The reason why I've highlighted that phrase is because knowledgeable. Yeah, Karun Chandhok was MVP. Bernie Collins was sprouting all the stuff that we've been talking about for the past 24 months. But props to her. Good points, one and all. They call this video Oscar Piastri 2.0. I feel like for a couple of months, not that we own 1.0, 2.0 copyright, but I feel like for a couple of months at least since the start of the season, your boy Cameron CC, we on here have been talking about Lando Norris 1.0. That's the dude who rocked up in Australia now, or 2.0, sorry, in Australia. And then ever since we've been seeing Lando Norris 1.0, they've stolen our nomenclature. Therefore, let's talk about this knowledgeable piece. Because I was thinking, wait there, I'm sure I heard a cheeky mistake at the altar of Simon Lazenby. Just a little bit. Let's hear what he had to say about Lewis Hamilton and the brakes. Roll the clip since they're so bloody knowledgeable.
Like Oscar might not make the turn.
He talks about
using
more engine braking here.
But it works, isn't it? This is the thing. Like,
here we go. Let's pull that back up.
Using more engine braking here in Ferrari that he wasn't used to doing in the Mercedes, and the change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industries and all that as well.
Excuse me? The change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industry. Maybe this is not. I must have heard that wrong. Because as far as I know, if we're talking knowledge, YouTube massive, I think Lewis Hamilton used to be using CI Carbon Industry brakes at Mercedes. And if I recall correctly, Ferrari Scuderia are using Brembo's. Simon couldn't have got that wrong. Not on the internationally syndicated broadcast F1 show. Surely not. Let's have a listen to that again, just in case. Maybe I'm being too anal here. No, he couldn't have got that wrong. Sky, for which I'm paying £90 a month, going uncorrected by Karun, Chandhok and the legend that is Bernie Collins. No, let's have a listen back to you. I must be mistaken, surely.
Brakes in the past, and he talked about using more engine braking here in Ferrari that he wasn't used to doing in the Mercedes, and the change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industries and all that as well. So whether there's mitigating circumstances, we shall see. And I remember...
Chat, I can't do it. Did Simon just say the change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industry? No, he can't. Let's play it again. I'm just double checking here. Double and triple checking because they're so knowledgeable, chat. Do you know what I mean? Bernie Collins, so brilliant. Karun, Chandhok. This trio makes sense. Sack off Ted Kravitz, they said in the comments. Let me just listen back to that again. Because again, if I recall correctly, do your own research on this. Don't just take it to the bank. Mercedes use CI Carbon Industry and Ferrari use Brembo. So why did Simon on this knowledgeable podcast, God tier levels of, say that Lewis is adapting from Brembo to Carbon Industries? He did say that. Let's check it one more time.
Oscar might not make the turn.
He talks about
he's the one
using
that's
more
closer to
engine
making
braking here in
But it
Ferrari
was.
that he wasn't used to doing in the Mercedes, and the change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industries and all that as well. So whether there's mitigation...
That's what he said, isn't it? The change of brakes from Brembo to Carbon Industry. Maybe just a slip, Rafa. Maybe it's just a slip and maybe a bit of a nothing burger. But it's not lost on me, and it would be remiss of me not to mention, since all of the YouTubers are calling out the Sky F1 show of the beacon of knowledge and light, being the best in the business, the internationally syndicated broadcast podcast that I pay £90 for every single month. And they're talking about Lewis Hamilton going from Brembo to CI and not to the reality that is the other way around. What are we doing, Sebastian? I just can't. Maybe it's me being stupid. That being said, brilliant podcast, substantively, aside from the bloody audio glitches, aside from the bloody them all being at home, no studio, aside from the fact that Bernie Collins still hasn't got herself a mic. What are we doing here, chat? I can't believe it. And again, this is why I would contend as my principal supposition the following: new media over the next 5 to 10 years, the likes of Tomo and Aldous and Quick Stuff and all these guys and girls, Josh Revel, are going to steal old media's lunch money because they don't take enough care. They don't inject the requisite money and time and care into their this is podcast. Surely take this thing serious. Take your audio and your visual serious and fact check. You can't come on there, Simon, as the chair of the Sky F1 show, talking about Sir Lewis Hamilton is moving from Brembo's to Carbon Industry brakes and not the other way around. And I would expect Karun, Chandhok, since he's so god tier an F1 mind, and since Bernie Collins is so intelligent as far as all things F1, I would have expected one of them at least to have corrected Simon, and all them edited it out before they put that forth into the public space. Injured, you're an absolute legend for becoming an elated peddler. Wayne, sometimes you got to go scorched stuff. I was listening to it, I was thinking, no, surely I've misheard. This can't be right. Maybe something of a nothing burger. But I digress. Sky Sports F1 show, leading podcast in the space. Give me a break. What are we doing here?